SpringFest is heating up at Lowe's. And for a limited time, we have the extra big deals you need to impress guests. Get your outdoor space ready and save $50 on the select Cobalt 24-volt blower kit, now $79. Plus, save $80 on the Charbroil Performance 4-burner grill, now $199. It's springtime, and our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid to 4/13. While supplies last. Selection varies by location.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. It's Roger Stone back in the Stone Zone right here on the Roger Stone Show. I was down for about 10 days. Starts as a slight tickle in the back of your throat. That becomes a drip. That becomes a cough. That becomes laryngitis. Let me give you a hint. Radio talk show hosts with laryngitis does not make them happy at the Red Apple audio networks. It doesn't make me happy either, because I like to be with my audience and bring you the inside skinny on what's really happening in American politics every single day of the week and here on Sundays. Well, I'm in I guess you call it a Twitter war. It's not called Twitter anymore. It's called X. And it's 100 times better than it was before Elon Musk bought it. Elon Musk, a man of enormous courage, in my opinion, not only bought Twitter, overpaid for it probably, but then immediately released all the documents that showed that Twitter executives had been working hand in glove to cancel and censor and silence and shadow ban anybody who questioned their narrative. In other words, if you had questions about the safety and effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccination or the wisdom of the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, or the 2020 election, or just support for Donald Trump, your candidate for president, well, pretty soon you were gone. I had almost 1 million followers, I think just slightly over 1 million followers in 2017, when one day I woke up and my entire profile was gone. They don't even send you a notice telling you that, which stupid thing that you posted got you banned. So it could have been any number of them. I think I hurt Jake Tapper's feelings. That could have been it. But anyway, now I'm in what they call a Twitter war with Laura Loomer, the self-described private, independent investigative journalist. And it is hot and heavy. It's a slug fest. She's got more followers than I do, but on the other hand, I have about 8 million email addresses for MAGA supporters and other supporters of mine. So, and I'm very active in blasting out written pieces from my website. But people question me, you don't want to get in a fight with her. Why do you like that? I'm reminded of that great actor George C. Scott playing the part of General George Patton when it comes to this war. Let's listen to General Patton.
I love it. God help me, I do love it so. I love it more than my life.
That's George C. Scott playing George Patton, and he's talking about war. By the way, Richard Nixon famously viewed that movie in the White House the day before he ordered the Christmas Day bombings in Hanoi and Haiphong Harbor. It is one of the greatest movies of all time. If you haven't seen it, Patton with George C. Scott, I strongly recommend it. But Laura Loomer calls herself an investigative journalist, but that would imply that she is independent, when in fact, unfortunately, every single word, every single syllable that she says is paid for by someone. Now, she and I were very close friends. I thought it was outrageous that because she is an outspoken critic of radical Islam, which I am also, by the way, she was banned on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Damn, she was even banned by Uber. She couldn't even get a little chicken chow mein delivered. And I supported both of her campaigns for Congress. She ran for Congress twice. First time, I must say it was valiant. She ran against Lois Frankel, who I think her age is deceased. She's calcified. She's almost as old as Nancy Pelosi. That's actually the district that President Donald Trump's palatial home, Mar-a-Lago, is in. It's a tough Democrat district. Laura ran a very good race. But then she ran the second time. Now, this was a race against an incumbent, Daniel Webster. No, not that Daniel Webster. But he was ill. He was underfunded. He couldn't campaign. It was a very conservative Republican district. She raised almost $893,000, but for some very strange reason, none of that money went into actual voter communications. In other words, no TV commercials, no cable commercials, no radio commercials, no digital media, no mailings, no phone calls. I ask a simple, and if you go to her FEC reports where you're supposed to break down how you spend your money, it's all going for quote-unquote administrative costs. So I'd like to know where that money went. But last week she tried to pull one of the great dirty tricks of all time. She somehow got word to President Donald Trump, because my belief is that she is banned now from communicating with Trump. That's what I've heard, that her access, of which she brags about often, has been cut off. But she got the word to Trump that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was on the verge of resigning in protest over the president's decision to attack Iran over their development of nuclear weapons. And fortunately, the president called me because he knows that I'm a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard, and I advocated that she support the president. Then I advocated to her that she become a Republican. I think she is one of the very best appointees in this cabinet. She is, of course, a decorated combat veteran. She's a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She served 4 terms in Congress from Hawaii. She was a pro-peace Democrat. She, too, like many of us in politics, she's had a bit of an odyssey, but she most definitely understands the deep state. And, of course, as the Director of National Intelligence, she was the one who declassified all of the documents that proved to us that the Russian collusion thing was a hoax. It was worse than a hoax. It was a seditious conspiracy that began in 2016, carried us all through 2017, and the attempts to destroy Donald Trump's presidency based on the false claim that Russia helped elect Donald Trump. Then was the centerpiece of 2 phony impeachments led by Adam Schiff and Congressman Eric Swalwell. We'll be talking about Eric Swalwell a little later in the show because he's got some problems. And then, of course, we had the theft of the 2020 election. We had the January 6th Fed insurrection. We learn more every week about that fraud on the American people, and which for many people suffered, later pardoned by Donald Trump. And then, of course, culminating in the raid at Mar-a-Lago. So Tulsi Gabbard, as the Director of National Intelligence, did what the CIA director in Donald Trump's first term, John Ratcliffe, did not do, which is to say declassified those documents so the American people could know the truth. But somehow Laura Loomer got word to President Trump that Tulsi Gabbard was going to resign in protest of his decision to attack Iran. And, of course, then Tulsi Gabbard testified before the Senate, and I thought her testimony was almost letter perfect. This is not about her views. She made it very clear. Her job is to get the very best intelligence she can and give it to the president. The president's job and authority is to make a decision, and he did. And because of executive privilege, we don't have to know what her personal advice to the president was, nor do we know the advice of J.D. Vance. But we do know that both of them supported the president's decision to move on Iran, as did I. But the president called me middle of the day 2 Mondays ago and asked me if I was still high on Tulsi Gabbard. I said, absolutely. He told me that he'd heard that she was about to resign. I said, that's absolutely false. I talked to her that morning. I knew she had no intention of resigning. He said, well, she could have been stronger in that testimony. And I said, Mr. President, I don't know what her personal advice to you was, and I don't need to know. But I thought her testimony was perfect. See, diversity of opinion within a presidential administration is a good thing. the president should hear different points of view. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Pat Moynihan, great U.S. senator from New York, Democrat. He worked in the Nixon White House. He clashed with George Shultz, then the Commerce Secretary, and John Mitchell, then the U.S. Attorney General, on issues like segregation. But when Richard Nixon made the decision to desegregate the public schools and to go to court to do it, you didn't see any of them rushing out like Joe Kent, who I think acted despicably. Joe Kent was an aide to Tulsi Gabbard. He said one thing in his confirmation hearings for the number 2 position at the Office of Defense Intelligence, and then he said the exact opposite. In his confirmation hearings, he said that Iran was close to a nuclear weapon, and if that turned out to be true, they should be stopped. Then he quit the administration, saying he disagreed with the president's decision to stop the Iranians from developing a nuclear weapon. That is betrayal. That is dishonest. In any event, then the president asked me whether he should fire Tulsi Gabbard. I said, why in the world would you fire her? She's done nothing to merit that. She's demonstrated no disloyalty. And frankly, Mr. President, if you fire her, you will make her 100 times more popular, because now those within your own coalition, those within MAGA who have reservations about this war, now they won't be led by Alex Jones or Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or some influencer. They'll be led by a former member of your cabinet who has a distinguished military record and a great deal of credibility, plus she's done nothing to merit your being terminated. Now, Laura Loomer gave away the game when she went up on X and said that Tulsi Gabbard will either resign or be fired today. I immediately fired back and said that was not the case. The president seemed satisfied by my answers, and he went on his business. I later got a text from one of the president's highest aides, and I asked her, what was that all about? And she told me the president needed reassurance, and you gave it to him. So, but the bottom line of here is that Laura Loomer is, I hate to say it, but she's Israel first. Now, I support Israel, always have. And I supported the attacks on Iran, but I don't have the intelligence the president has. On the other hand, I'm not for a long, drawn-out, boots-on-the-ground, mega American casualties that creates giant opportunities for defense contractors. And the idea that Laura Loomer is an independent journalist is absurd. Everything she says is paid for. I remember when somebody paid her to eat dog food on the air. She didn't know it was dog food. She thought it was some kind of new health food, but she got paid to eat dog food. That was pretty funny. Anyway, I have called her out. She's not very happy about that, but you see, I do have a few private clients because I can't make a living doing just radio and writing. I do have a few private clients, and they're all legally, you have to require, when you lobby anyone, you have to file that lobbying, and I've done that. I'm in full disclosure. I would submit to you that she has clients for whom she is carrying water with federal agents, and she's not filed. Now, let's be very clear. I am not saying she is an agent for Israel, and therefore in violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. See, the Israelis are way too smart for that. They have wealthy American Jews paying her to beat the war drums. Now, whether those folks are getting reimbursed or they derive some benefit directly from Israel, I don't know. I'm not saying that they do. But I do say that we need to have full disclosure. Now, where she made a mistake was she accused me of representing Somalia. And it's understandable, but it's also not true. Somebody, a lobbyist who does represent Somalia, included in his filing that he was hiring me as a subcontractor. There was only one problem. That never actually happened. So, no, I don't represent Somalia. Therefore, I'm not involved in the cover-up of the Somalian fraud in Minnesota. But that's actionable, and I have very good lawyers. She doesn't have good lawyers. The only lawyer she had, Larry Klayman, he's actually been barred from the practice of law in every jurisdiction that would be germane here. So the Twitter war will continue, and it's entertaining. I mean, I took a great clip, that famous clip of Chill Wills in Dr. Strangelove riding the nose of a thermonuclear missile down into the nuclear cloud, and I put Laura Loomer's face on it. No, she now stands with the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Obamas and the Bidens. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show, and don't go away, because we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. I see that Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida playing golf with President Donald Trump today. This galls me a bit because, you see, I believe in loyalty in politics. Ron DeSantis was an indistinguished congressman with a bad suit and an even worse haircut. 2018, running behind the state agriculture commissioner Adam Putnam in the polls, 53-8. His campaign coffers were empty, and Donald Trump lifted him from political obscurity with an endorsement in the governor's race, in which he skyrocketed ahead of Putnam. Then, in all honesty, DeSantis was such a poor candidate that Donald Trump had to change his schedule 3 times the last 2 weeks of the 2018 campaign to drag Ron DeSantis, who has some very poor people skills, shall we say, over the finish line. I supported him very strongly in that race. And his reward was to be stabbed in the back. President Donald Trump may not know this, but the FBI warned Governor DeSantis before the raid on Mar-a-Lago that the raid was coming. Did the governor give his political patron the tip-off? No, he did not. In fact, he launched a $300 million campaign challenging Donald Trump for the presidential nomination. Now, this just past week, I saw that Ron DeSantis stopped by a pizza place called Beats here in Florida, and online he's been talking about some of the great pizza meccas of the world, Frank Pepe's and Sally's and the Modern. But here's the point. Ron DeSantis was openly seen washing down his pizza with grape soda, which proves that he isn't even Italian-American. Ron DeSantis, a twisted freak with a severe personality disorder and a very pushy wife. My reports tell me that he begged Trump to be appointed Attorney General, and the president said, "No way, Jose." Listening to the Roger Stone Show, and we are definitely in the Stone Zone today. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. Well, we now know that while President Donald Trump gave peace a chance, the talks this weekend, headed by J.D. Vance, along with the president's son-in-law, very capable and able Jared Kushner, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, ended in no deal. As many of us suspected, the Iranians were just stalling for time. I think they're now going to find out what it's like to cross Donald Trump. He's given them every chance for peace, and they have no interest in peace. They want to continue to subjugate their people, and they want to develop a nuclear weapon with which they could destroy the world. A man who knows more about this than perhaps anyone in the country today, former Congressman, Senator from New Jersey, Bob Torricelli. We used to call him the Torch. He was the boy wonder of New Jersey politics, 7 terms in the House. Every political operative I know respects Bob Torricelli because before he went to the House, he was a political operative like us, worked for Walter Mondale. And of course, I was working for Ronald Reagan at the time. But in the Senate, he had an extraordinarily distinguished career. He was one of the leading voices against communism and the brutal Cuban dictatorship in our hemisphere. And he actually served on the Senate Finance, Government Affairs, Foreign Relations, Judiciary, and Rules Committee. But he is universally viewed as an expert on foreign policy in both the Middle East and in this hemisphere. has been a strong supporter of the democratic opposition in Iran, and therefore we turn to him today to try to decipher what comes next. Every time we have him on the show, our ratings go through the ceiling. So, Bob, the folks out in there in New Jersey must still love you. I'm delighted to have you join us today on the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. It's a propitious moment. It's an extraordinary afternoon to take a look at this situation. We're going to remember these few days.
Well, you and to a great degree, I agreed with you. You were a voice of caution here. You thought that a strategic approach where we continued to bomb the Iranian Republican Guard targets and you would ultimately cause an uprising of the police, the military, and the people. Generally speaking, when people don't have food, they get very, very upset. The president must have thought, based on his intelligence, that the Iranians' development of a nuclear device with which they could threaten and destroy the world was closer than maybe the rest of us thought, and he made a decision. And then at the last minute, when he had all of his military forces arrayed, it appeared that the regime blinked, passing a new peace proposal through the Pakistanis, causing the peace talks this weekend. Vice President J.D. Vance has now announced that those peace talks have failed. So the real question is, what's next?
Well, Roger, I would caution people now in your audience, so whether people agreed with what President Trump did or not, if they're on the right of the MAGA movement and may have thought that the United States shouldn't have been involved, or the left of the Democratic Party and opposed military interventions as a matter of principle, none of that really matters right now. We're being challenged by a theocracy in the Middle East, bent on terrorizing its own people and on getting a nuclear weapon. They've challenged the United States, and they've challenged the world. They're now going to attempt to control the Straits of Hormuz, which would be an incredible precedent for nations around the world, that you can close these choke points and control international commerce. I don't care who you are, what your philosophy is, what your party is, that cannot be allowed to stand. The Chinese would notice that with the Straits of Taiwan. Indonesia would notice it with the Malacca Straits. The Danish could notice it with access to the Baltic. And the Turks could note it as well. And the choke points to the Black Sea. It would be international chaos. So no matter who you are or where you're from, that cannot stand. Second, it appears that despite the incredible beating the Iranians have taken, that they've hardened their position on their getting nuclear weapons. A regime that is this radical and this irresponsible simply cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. I hope across partisan lines on that we can all agree. So I think, personally, Roger, I think the president's options are quite limited. If there's not a reversal of Iranian position, and not very soon, the United States Navy is going to have to open the Straits of Hormuz.
General Michael Flynn was on this show 6 weeks ago, and he said they're perfectly capable of doing that, and I believe that he is correct. It would be nice if our NATO allies, who benefit from the nearly 20% of the world's oil that flows through the Straits, would help us. Not only will they not help us, in most cases they won't even let us use our bases in their country. That's a separate conversation.
No, it's been disgraceful. I mean, Tony Blair pointing out that the British not allowing the United States to use air bases in Britain when the cornerstone of British defense is the United States Air Force is beyond irresponsible. And I'm very disappointed in the Italians not allowing our air bases in Sicily to be used. That may, however, Roger, change. Iran has not just challenged the United States. They've challenged the entire international community by closing the Straits of Hormuz. And I would think now, if President Trump goes back to the allies and says, we're going to open the Straits of Hormuz, we're going to remove all these mines, and then we're going to place it under international supervision until this conflict is ended, I think you'd start getting some support, at least from the British. And President Trump is probably right. We really don't need anybody's help, but it would make it easier and it would make it fairer. removing all those mines may not be easy. It's been suggested in the press, I don't know, that the Iranians may not even know where all the mines are. They just put them out into the straits. That's going to be difficult. And when this is all over, too, Roger, I hope people learn a lesson that we have gone from Ronald Reagan's goal was to have a 500-ship Navy. That was his bottom line. We're now at 350 and falling. Navies are not obsolete. They are essential for our economic security and our physical security. And when this is over, I hope the President and the Congress take a good, hard look at the size and capability of the United States Navy. Simply because it's powerful and the finest in the world does not mean it's necessarily sufficient.
Speak, if you will, to the brutality of this regime. I'm not sure if you will remember this, but about a year ago, you asked me to have dinner with 3 members of the MEK, the opposition, in South Florida. They very graciously flew in. We had a great dinner, but there was only 2 of them. And I said, gentlemen, I thought there was a third guy supposed to join us. They said, oh, yeah, unfortunately, he got assassinated in Paris last week. This is an extraordinarily brutal regime. And the courage of the Iranian people to rise up against this bloodthirsty regime is a story of stunning courage.
You know, Roy, one of the frustrations I have as someone who has spent his life in American foreign policy is I've learned that for the American people, if the New York Times isn't there, it didn't happen. So if you read in the American press today the situation in Iran, you'll learn that there is no other opposition. There's no choice but the mullahs or the Shah's son, and there's no overthrowing this regime. Well, you know this why? Because you're reporting from London or sitting at your desk in New York? How is it you came to this conclusion? Thousands of brave people have died on the streets of Iranian cities against this regime and continue to die. They're executing some every day. The MEK, by example, and it's not the only group in the diaspora, but when the Shah was overthrown 47 years ago, that coalition included many people, communists, socialists, professional groups, military groups, and a group called the MEK, which is a democratic origin. As soon as the Ayatollah consumed power and monopolized power, they split. And they've been a democratic opposition in exile ever since. It's estimated that in 1988, 100,000 of their members were killed by the clerical regime in Tehran. This is a group that is dedicated to a democratic Iran, a non-nuclear Iran, a secular Iran, a gender-equal Iran, at peace with its neighbors and the West. And interestingly, not asking the United States to do its fighting. They did support attacks on the IRGC, but do not support American troops entering the country. They believe that with the IRGC weakened sufficiently, in time the people on the streets will take power and overthrow the regime. But it frustrates me so to continue to hear the news media and the State Department continue to argue that there's simply no alternative. There is an alternative. And ultimately, we can open the Straits of Hormuz. We can destroy their nuclear capability. We can destroy their ballistic missile capability. But ultimately, the only way to get peace in the region is the regime has to be overthrown. And the only way to do that is the Iranian people, not the American people, the Iranian people.
This is an extraordinarily dangerous regime. You were telling me some time ago that how you figured out that your email and your cell phone were being hacked by the Iranians had to do with your being invited to a conference, I believe.
Yeah, they may be evil, but they're not stupid. Remember, this is a regime that planned the assassination of President Trump, actually had an active assassination attempt against John Bolton and John Pompeo, and I have the distinct honor of also being on their terrorist list. They actually created a fake invitation for me to go to a conference in the Persian Gulf several years ago. Having read my emails, they duplicated perfectly other invitations I had received, sent me this. Only by chance, I called the offices of the sponsoring organization to change my flight when I was told that they apologized, but they hadn't invited me. It had all been done by Iranian operatives. So for all of us who have been involved in efforts against the Iranian government, they are dangerous people. And to this day, as you noted, the MEK continues to lose members in Europe, no less than Iran, to assassination.
Late last year, my lawyer was contacted by the FBI, who insisted that the Iranians had hacked my email, both my email accounts. I have more than one. I have one encrypted one that I don't believe they hacked, but they wouldn't have found anything interesting other than my mother's recipe for chicken cacciatore. But nonetheless, it's chilling to know that a brutal regime like this is hacking your email. We'll talk about this a bit more when we come back, but the idea that we would replace a theocracy, a brutal theocracy, with a return to the monarchy and the son of the Shah is actually of huge public relations benefit to the current regime. You see, the Shah has no support in the country. The Shah was every bit as brutal to the people under their vaunted Savak, their secret police. Now, like Nixon, I agreed that at least the Shah was an ally of the United States, and at least he kept ride on these radicals, but he was not exactly a paragon of human rights. And when you see all these videos, and you'll see lots of them, and by the way, we'll be pummeled with bots this afternoon telling us that the House of Pahlavi should be restored. There is no public support for the Shah. He has zero chance of governing that country. The people don't want him any more than they want the regime. And Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor, has been particularly strong and articulate on this subject. So for those of you who thought when the president said, well, we're talking to some more moderate elements in the country, for those who thought that was the son of the Shah, first of all, he's not a moderate. Secondarily, he has no public support. And the videos they post up of him being surrounded with huge groups of supporters, they're being shot in London. That's called astroturfing. You're talking to the OG. I know what it looks like when I see it. We're talking to Senator Bob Torricelli, former member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, about the situation in Iran, and we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. We're talking to former New Jersey Senator Bob Torricelli, a.k.a. The Torch, one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East and in this hemisphere. He is, of course, the author of the legislation creating the Cuban embargo, kind of an odd thing today. There aren't many hardline anti-communist Democrats, but Bob, who I think you'd have to call a liberal Democrat generally in his outlook, but on foreign policies matters, he always supported a strong national defense and a hard line against Marxism in this hemisphere. Let me ask you the toughest question. If you were president, Senator Torricelli, for the balance of the time we have left here, if you were the president right now, what would you do?
I'm going to tell you what I do, Roger, because I know you talk to the president, and I hope that our advice will be consistent, because I think this is such an important moment in American history. The Ayatollah has given the United States really no choice. I think that the United States needs to seize those Channel Islands in the Straits of Hormuz with a Marine Corps amphibious landing. It may have to land in some areas along the Straits of Hormuz and simply destroy anything that moves on the borders of the Straits of Hormuz to open up the straits again, and continue to suppress Iranian ability to manufacture ballistic missiles and drones, and obviously any effort to extract that nuclear fuel. Their situation is unsustainable. I know they're tough. I know they've been through a lot. I know they are still fighting back, but there's just so much punishment that people can take. The economy is in complete ruins. The military has been destroyed. Just the president needs to see this through. And the American people, whether you were with the president or not, whether you thought it was a good idea or not, this is a dangerous world. If the United States ever takes a military stand and an economic stand and fails, because adversaries will notice and we will get tested everywhere. This cannot fail.
And if you were giving a word of advice to our NATO allies who've been so anxious to get us to pony up for their defense and support of the Ukrainian regime. By the way, they haven't had an election in Ukraine in a long time. What would be your advice to our NATO allies?
Very simply, we understand the advantages of NATO. We understand that they are mutual, but our first responsibility is to ourselves. And you need to be there now. And if you do not, then we need to start not ending the NATO treaty. I think that would be a mistake. But we certainly don't need to have 50,000 soldiers in Germany. We don't need to maintain this infrastructure. We don't need to give them access to the latest technology. They need to step up and be for America when America needs them.
I have to ask you this question because you had a very distinguished political career, 7 terms in the House, serving in the Senate, ran the senatorial committee for your fellow Democrats. Do you miss public office?
I miss the large public policy issues. You know, I love the country so deeply, and I've given so much of my life to it. When you see these painful moments, and you know that if we get this wrong, a generation is going to pay a price for it. These are not issues of the moment. They last generations. I miss not being in the room trying to do right by the country. But as you know, Roger, more than I, the price of this has become so high. The nonsense. You know, one of the happiest days of my life is when I got elected to the Congress. The second happiest day of my life is when I left. It's just the price on your quality of life and your family is just insurmountable. And I don't know how we get back to the point where people can be in public service, feel they're doing something worthwhile, but not jeopardizing their health, their lives, and their family. And I say this knowing that what you endured was worse, but it's a high price. And I do think, too, my fellow Democrats who are concerned now about the Justice Department, whether it's being weaponized, let me assure you something. Don't forget Bill Clinton. Don't forget the weaponization that took place there, or somewhat against Al Gore, against me. If Donald Trump can succeed in separating the Justice Department and the FBI from being used politically, it will be a contribution to the whole country.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Robert J. Torricelli, the last great Democrat senator from the Garden State. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone, my friend.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Well, we are examining the rise and fall of California Congressman Eric Swalwell. For a little more than 3 years, Eric Swalwell, as a member of Congress, accused me of being a Russian intelligence asset and being a traitor to my country. The Department of Justice under Joe Biden later determined that Eric Swalwell, along with Senator Adam Pencilneck Schiff, illegally leaked classified documents to try to smear President Donald Trump. And not that long ago, investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker Joel Gilbert, who is a real mensch, by the way, dug in and figured out that Eric Swalwell wasn't eligible to run for governor of California because he did not have a domicile in the state. He didn't live in the state, which the state constitution clearly requires. And his mortgage in Washington, D.C., he claimed to be a D.C. resident. He also had a huge amount of debt. But Joel Gilbert very valiantly filed a series of legal challenges in California, went through the entire court system, and we learned firsthand that in California, if you're a Democrat, the law, the rules, the Constitution, these things just don't matter. But in a stunning act of karma, we now have an epic scandal. Now, Eric Swalwell is not unknown to scandal. The irony of him accusing me of being a Russian intelligence asset, we now know that he had an affair with a Chinese communist spy named Fang Fang. And we also know that while Eric may have penetrated her, she penetrated Eric's office when he was a member of the House Intelligence Committee, and he had access to the country's top classified documents, some of the ones that he leaked, I believe, in violation of the law. Acting Attorney Todd Blanche, if you're listening, sir, I don't understand why Swalwell and Schiff have not been charged with that very serious crime, but there's nobody who knows more about this than our guest, Joel Gilbert. He's an extraordinary musician, an extraordinary filmmaker, but he has been on this case from the beginning. Joel Gilbert, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Okay, great to be here and good setup. And look, Eric Swalwell, always a very low IQ person. He was an anti-Trump robot from the beginning. He never had any substance whatsoever. And I was just shocked that all these unions jumped on board to endorse him running for governor. And that's why I took a look at his residency. He is required to live in California for 5 years according to the California Constitution. I took my case to the Sacramento court. I got cut down because he had some campaign worker who lives in a 1,300 square foot crappy house with her husband and dog and her kid, claimed that she rented it to Swalwell, even though it wasn't true. So they accepted that on the face of it. I took it all the way to the California Supreme Court. It was a DEI Supreme Court. They had one white guy, one black guy, one Asian guy, one Hispanic woman, one black woman, or two black women, one white lady. So in a DEI court, they'll always reward people who gave them the job they weren't qualified for. So I got cut down there. But I did file, and just got covered in the New York Post. It's all over the news today, Fox News, Daily Mail. I filed a DHS complaint with ICE against Swalwell and his wife because I found out they've been employing an illegal alien Brazilian nanny for the past couple of years. They've also paid her off the books for 2 years when she was not legal. When she was previously legal, they actually paid her out of Swalwell's campaign funds. And you can't do that. So I also filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission, letting them know that he was charging full-time year-round child care to his campaign when you're only allowed to do it incrementally for specific campaign events. So he's charged over $400,000 of his donors' money just to pay child care. He even started paying his wife to watch their own kids. So Swalwell is corrupt. He's a pretty dumb guy. And I think looks like he's finally going down.
This latest scandal seems to take the cake. He is one of those guys who said all women should be believed. It turns out that he has a long and it seems to me relatively documented history of sexual harassment and abuse, particularly of women, younger women, using his power, position. I mean, this guy's a freak.
Well, I've always known there's a larger scandal, that I didn't know all the details. I did know that he had $100,000 in student loans when he entered Congress 2012 and $100,000 in credit card debt. 2024, in his disclosures, he still hasn't paid them off. He also cashed out his pension, which is a big red flag. Now, he charges all this child care to his campaign. So there was something is wrong. He's putting his money somewhere, whether it's paying off prostitutes, whether it's paying off women who he's abused. There's a lot more that's going to come out because this guy has made a lot of money in Congress, but he's dead broke.
This shocking new video of him rolling around on a bed with a woman, you can see there's another man there, so it's kind of a group thing. That sure looks to me like Senator Ruben Gallegos of Arizona, who was briefly the chairman of Swalwell's presidential campaign. Now, there's something laughable. But this is not just one woman coming forward. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's a number of women who've come forward. Now, there are a number of people saying, oh, this was all done by Roger Stone. No. This is worth talking about. Several years ago, a producer I know at Fox called me and told me tomorrow a scandal is going to break in which Al Franken will be accused of sexual assault. And I put it up on Twitter. I said exactly that. Tom Arnold, who was briefly married to Roseanne Barr, then went completely crazy and insisted that I had coached the woman who worked at KABC in Los Angeles. I'm not sure I even met the woman, but that I had come to California, coached her. The whole thing was a setup. Until recently, I was still banned on KABC for something I never did. No, I didn't take down Al Franken. Kind of wish I had, but I didn't. Nor did I have any role in taking down Eric Swalwell. In fact, if you want to listen to the man who's played a greater role in getting this cretin out of public service, you're listening to him. His name is Joel Gilbert.
Well, look, when my first revelation came about his residency problem, he went on Twitter and said it was a MAGA conspiracy. He calls me names. He calls me an idiot. He constantly uses the F word. He's the only member of Congress on Twitter and his speeches in Congress. He's always using the F word. F this, F that. He's just the most immature and childish person ever to hold public office. Now, his BFF is that Ruben Gallego, and it does appear that that's him in that video with the hookers in Las Vegas. So he's going to have to answer for this. And Swalwell is bringing down a lot of people with his whole attitude that he's above the law. He's got his the woman that claimed that she rented her tiny house where she lives to him, Christina Mallorca. I put her up for tax fraud. I reported her because she takes a homestead exemption every year that requires her to live in the house. The nanny, Amanda Barbosa, is being looked at for overstaying her visa. And Swalwell's wife, Brittany Swalwell, I made a complaint with the Department of Labor on her for immigration fraud because she lied on an application trying to legalize the nanny. And the theme that I found with Swalwell is he's a lawyer, so he always starts out trying to do the right thing. He applies to legalize the nanny. They say no, and he employs her anyway. Same thing with the FEC. He actually requested from the FEC to pay full-time child care to his campaign. They said, no, you can't do it. He did it anyway. So that's the kind of dangerous person he is if he ever became governor. But what's shocking is so many people endorsed him to become governor when he was just such a low IQ individual, such a robot, and so many people thought he'd make a great governor, and now he's imploded.
Joel, we're having a little bit of trouble with your audio, so we're going to take a break now and have you call back in. We're talking to Joel Gilbert, investigative journal, often writes for the Gateway Pundit, but also a documentary filmmaker. His greatest film ever, the story of Danny Williams, the illegitimate son of Bill Clinton. To me, that is among his greatest work. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get back as well. We'll be back with Joel Gilbert, investigative journal, with the latest on Eric Swalwell, who sure looks to me like he's going down. Go away.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. We're talking to the investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker Joel Gilbert. And we're zeroed in on the slow motion collapse of Eric Swalwell. It looks to me like Swalwell is now taking his style and hygiene tips from Steve Bannon. I mean, this guy, he looks greasy. He looks like he doesn't shave. It looks like he doesn't bathe. Is he trying to affect some kind of outsider? And as you point out, he's always dropping the F-bomb. A little karma here, folks. I got to admit, for 2.5 years, he and his political leader Adam Schiff, he's kind of like Schiff's wingman. They insisted that I was a traitor to my country and Russian spy. When it turns out that it was Swalwell himself who was having an extended affair with a Chinese communist asset, a spy named Fang Fang. And now even Adam Schiff has thrown his homeboy, his wingman, under the bus, withdrawing his endorsement. Now, Katie Porter, the congresswoman from California, I remember her distinctly crying the night that Donald Trump was elected because she said, if her daughter needed an abortion, she now didn't know how she would get one. She's one of the most vile creatures I've ever met. But California has a strange system. It's called the jungle primary. So there are no party primaries. Everybody, Republican and Democrat, who wishes to run for governor runs in one united election, and assuming no one gets 50%, and no one ever does, the two top vote getters face off in a primary. Right now, to my surprise, Steve Hilton, the former Fox commentator, seems to be leading the pack. Eric Swalwell was in second place. I doubt that he is today. After that, I think Katie Porter's in contention. There's a Republican sheriff, Chad Bianco, who actually last week did some election integrity stuff, noted that more people had voted in the election than are registered to vote in the county that he's from. So I applaud him for that, at least. But what's your assessment of that race now, Joel?
Well, we got Tom Steyer, of course, who ran for president.
Oh, yes.
Billionaire. He's all over the place out here with advertisements. I think he isn't a very unappealing person. When he starts to speak, you just kind of get turned off. I don't think he has any substance. Honestly, none of the Democrats had any substance. Swalwell at least had a good strategy. He knew he had no substance, so he figured if I come out as this anti-Trump fanatic, if I don't shave, and I'll try to look hip, and I'll use the F word a lot, maybe I'll get 15% of the nut jobs voting for me, and that might be enough to make it into the top two. And in California, if you're in the top two and you're a Democrat, you'll become the governor. So his strategy actually wasn't bad. The problem turned out to be that he was not a California resident. He's harboring the illegal alien nanny. He's apparently, one of his staffers says that he raped her. So he is imploding because of who he really is. But I think it'll be Steve Hilton, and I think it'll be Tom Steyer with him in the general election. And my prediction is Hilton wins because he's a real authentic person, and Steyer's just this anti-climate fanatic who just makes you really uncomfortable when he starts talking. But he does have enough money, I think, to promote himself into the final two.
Unfortunately, of course, the Democrats have a huge registration edge, and that also assumes that we have an honest election. The last congressional elections in Orange County, California, once a bulwark of conservatism. More people voted in the two congressional seats than are registered to vote. Why Mike Johnson did not appeal that election to the House Administration Committee, which has the authority to determine who is seated, I really don't know. If we don't start playing the way the Democrats do in terms of the aggressiveness, when they need to be called out when they violate the law, and just, I don't know, I think our problem is not the Democrats. We know where they stand. Our problem are the gutless, feckless, weak-kneed, lily-livered, white wine swilling, brie cheese eating country club Republicans who just don't seem to have the guts or the cojones to fight for America.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. In Orange County, don't forget, the Republicans actually won the election, but they kept counting votes for another week. And after they finished counting the extra votes that came in after election was over, that's how the Democrats are able to win. The Republicans didn't say a word about it. Republicans are terrified of being called names. They're terrified of being attacked on social media. The biggest thing that terrifies them is the R word, being called a racist. You're doing something racist. So they tend to be intimidated, unfortunately, as you say, and don't stand up. That's why I decided to take a stand right away against Swalwell, and I haven't backed down. I've been hitting him for his residency problem, his illegal alien Brazilian nanny, his finances, you name it. And someone asked me what's going to happen on social media, and I responded, the truth will eventually always win. And I got a lot of nice response for that.
Joel Gilbert, not only a great investigative reporter, but also a very accomplished musician, and he was at the helm of a Bob Dylan tribute band. I'm also a huge Bob Dylan fan, although not as knowledgeable as Joel. But Joel, one final question off politics. I know this is a hard one because Dylan went through many periods. He was a very innovative musician. But what would be your favorite period for Dylan? What would be your favorite album?
Well, I would say the favorite album is probably Bringing It All Back Home. But the period of Dylan that is still underappreciated, that once you look at that music, you'll be just blown away, is the religious period. When he made 3 religious albums in the late 70s, he became an evangelical Christian. And all of those songs still to this day stand on their own. They're very emotional. It's as big as when he went acoustic to electric, when he went and did religious music, Gotta Serve Somebody, Slow Train Coming. Those are just incredible songs. I'd encourage anyone that's not familiar with it to go get those albums.
I'd have to go with Blood on the Tracks. And my favorite track, even though I'm not sure that the story's right, of course, was Hurricane, his famous song about the New Jersey boxer Hurricane Carter.
Well,
all-time favorite of mine.
I did interview Hurricane, and he was as guilty as hell. And once Dylan realized it, he never sang the song again. That's the backstory.
All right, Joel Gilbert, where can people find you on X?
I'm there, all kind of material. Joel S, middle initial S Gilbert. Joel S Gilbert on Twitter. Highway61ENT.com for all my films.
All right, we're going to be right back with Congressman Tim Burchett. He's a truth teller. You're not going to want to miss this. Stand by.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have two favorite members of the U.S. House of Representatives. One of them is Anna Paulina Luna of Florida. Ironically, I was initially opposed to her candidacy. I was suspect that she might be a closet supporter of Ron DeSantis over Donald Trump. I wasn't sure that she was a real conservative. Boy, was I wrong. Completely and totally wrong. And I've apologized publicly and private for her. She is one of the most courageous, hardest working members of Congress in Washington, and she makes a real difference. But now we're going to talk to my other favorite member of Congress, and that's Tim Burchett, who represents let's see, I want to get this right, the 2nd District of Tennessee. He's a former mayor and state senator. He's a country boy. He's a little different than me, but he is a extraordinarily principled fiscal conservative, strong supporter of the president, a real Barry Goldwater, Ronald Reagan conservative. And he's just not a politician. He's a political leader. But the thing I like about Tim is he tells you like it really is. And there aren't many like that. Tim Burchett, thank you so much for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. To have me hold me in the same regards as Luna is a pretty cool thing. So thank you. She's one of my best friends, and her and her husband Andy and their baby Henry are some of my favorites. So thank you, brother.
You're both great patriots, and you're doing amazing work for this country. And I have to chuckle when I follow you on X because you're both informative and entertaining. One of the things that really bothers me is the way members of Congress are able to use insider trader information in order to make millions and millions of dollars on the stock market, pardon me, when they know, based on their public service, what's going to happen in any particular area of the country or in business and so on. And it just seems to me that this is wrong and it ought to be outlawed. And I know you and Anna Paulina Luna have been very articulate about this, but why can't we get this passed? It is just common sense.
Mainly because a lot of members of Congress, frankly, are dirt bags. They're not there to protect the country or even help our president. They're just there to get wealthy. Not all of them, but some of them. And you know, they come back now and they're saying that Luna and I, of course, what we wanted to do is just say, if you're in Congress, you got to sell all your stocks and put them in a mutual fund. That's what I do with mine. And I cashed out my $11,000 mutual fund to send my daughter to school this past year. But I think I've got about $800 now in a mutual fund. But you know, and I get sick and tired of it, frankly, Mr. Stone, when I hear members of Congress say things like, "Oh, this is costing me so much money, you know, to be in Congress." And I mean, it's almost like the country is lucky to have them. Well, dadgummit, if it's costing you so much dadgum money, go home and make your money. Nobody's making 500-600% return on their investment. You know, these people are crooked as a dog's leg, and it's both parties. And it's just, to me, it's disgusting, really. America's not buying it. And the latest legislation they want to pass is, and you know, the president endorsed that. The president said, absolutely, well, y'all need to get it. This looks bad. Let's get out of this. Well, now they've come back with a bill that says, well, you can keep your stocks, but you can't buy any more. So, I mean, that even, the drive will be on that much more for insider trading, because you got some people have $10, $20 million portfolios, and good and well they're going to be voting to increase the value of those things, or they're going to know which ones to hold and which ones to sell. And it just, to me, and they'll want to make what they got worth more. That's human nature. I just wish we could get past that. And two, it is a complete and total honor to be a member of Congress. More people have played professional baseball than have been members of the United States Congress. If you don't get off the airplane every Monday or Tuesday whenever you get to D.C. and look at that dome off the Capitol and you don't get chills, you ought to get back on the plane and go home, because we don't need you. We need people that want to serve, that want to do what's right for the country and not gripe about it. And we get paid $172,000, something like that. I come from a family of public educators. Most people would love to have that type of income, and that, and you're out there and everybody tells you how great you are and you get your butt kissed coming and going. And, it's just not reality. So it needs to be fixed. Do I think we'll do it? No. I think we'll pass some weak piece of legislation. The Senate will either pass it, or they'll pass something different, and then they'll argue about it, and nothing will ever happen. And both sides will be up toasting themselves with an expensive glass of wine at Kennebunkport or someplace else, and laughing at the rest of us. So I'm kind of fed up with them on that issue.
Well, I had to chuckle the other day. I tried to call you on the cell phone, and you were indisposed. You sent me back a message saying that you were in your office with some Howard Baker Republicans from Tennessee. It reminded me of when I first approached Donald Trump about supporting Ronald Reagan in 1980, and I finally wangled an appointment with him to make my pitch. And he said, well, I wondered when you were going to come here. I said, what do you mean? He said, I've been waiting for you. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they've all been to see me. I mean, George Bush, John Connally, Howard Baker. I don't see a winner in the group. I said, let me go through this with you. George Bush, what'd you think of him? He said, man, that guy's got the weakest handshake of anybody I've ever met. I said, he said, John Connally? He said, Roger, I had to count my fingers after I shook that guy's hand. And I said, Senator Howard Baker, he said, I had no idea he was so short and so fat. So you can see Trump hadn't changed. We used to call them in Virginia, we called them Mountain Valley Republicans. There's a strain of moderate Republicans that run through part of Virginia and into Tennessee, and well, they're not all that conservative like Tim and I, no. But it's a traditional strain of the party. Saw you post this the other day. I found this very offensive. Joy Reid, the African American commentator. If her IQ was 1 point lower, you'd have to water her like a plant. And it is. She says that white people can't invent anything. I agree with your colleague Wesley Hunt. I am so tired of this divisive, race-baiting playbook that these people stick to. It just seems to me race relationships in this country were so much better before Barack Obama came along. 100%,
Mr. Stone. As usual, you call it like you see it, and you're 100% accurate. Look, they don't want the Obamas of the world and the Al Sharptons of the world. They don't want peace. They don't want whites and blacks getting along, and they want it, the complete thing dumbed down, because when it gets to pure intellect and putting the best player in, as I like to say, put the best player in, coach, they're out of business. They are completely out of business, and frankly, they should be. If they can't keep their people down and having somebody to blame, for their woes, and not themselves, not the high number of illegitimate children being born, and just the excuses that are being made, they are out of the picture, and their grifting stops at that point. And that's frankly what we really need to see happen. But I don't know that we will anytime soon, because they just keep playing into that thing. The Black Lives Matters movement, for instance, the I believe the lady who was in charge of it, I can't remember how many houses she ended up owning. I never saw one kid get sent to school or one single mom taken care of during that. Maybe I missed it. Maybe they did. But if they did, they sure didn't tout them very much. And to me, that's a missed opportunity. And frankly, it's dishonest in my opinion.
Well, in all candor, we're the party of civil rights. Abraham Lincoln it was our leader. Desegregation of the public schools, that was done under Richard M. Nixon. The 1958 Civil Rights Bill would never have passed over the opposition of Lyndon Johnson and the segregationist Democrats without the leadership of Richard Nixon. Affirmative action, which many of my conservative friends don't like, that was a policy not of Lyndon Johnson, not of John F. Kennedy. In fact, people don't know this. Richard Nixon appointed more African Americans to federal office than Lyndon Johnson and JFK combined. The Office of Minority Business Enterprise, started by Richard Nixon. So we are the party of civil rights, and Donald Trump understands that black voters want the same thing as every other voter in America: good schools, good jobs, safe neighborhoods. So the hatred that is sowed between blacks and whites, this is not coming from us. This is not coming from Trump's gold plan. To empower the African American communities built on Richard Nixon's Dignity, Unity, and Black Capitalism plan. Black voters don't want to be employees; they want to be employers. They want a part of the action. We are the party of civil rights, and we should start talking more about it.
I agree. Memphis, Tennessee. Let's look at that right now. My buddy Brent Collins over there, he's a state senator. He got Marsha Blackburn, our senator, involved in that. And what happened? The president sent the National Guard in because of all the crime and the violence in Memphis, Tennessee. And who opposed it? Traditionally, the leaders, the Democrat leaders. But who loved it? The moms of the community and the citizens of the community who said enough is enough. They're tired of their kids getting shot. They're tired of the thug gangs taking advantage of their children, killing their kids, and basically raping their community. And who did that? A Republican, Donald J. Trump. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what's happened all across the country. And they can't stand it. Murder rates are down all over. And it's because we've got somebody at the top that's saying enough is enough. And that's finally we've got that. And, this, of course, the race baiting that the left does, the continuous just running down of our country and just denying people basic rights, that's come to an end under Donald Trump. So Memphis. I went to Memphis. I was there several years ago, Mr. Stone, and I always remember I was down on Beale Street. It was a weekend, and this police officer had arresting somebody, and it was a huge crowd, and they had one guy arrested. The other police officer had his gun out, pointing it to the crowd with his back to his fellow officer who was arresting this thug. And they were trying to keep the crowd off of them, so they were rocking the car. And I'd never seen anything like that. I asked somebody, what the heck's going on? I said, it's just another Saturday night. And they were just so used to it. And we shouldn't be used to that. That it should not be a mob rule type situation. I went there 2 weeks ago, Mr. Stone, or 3 weeks ago, went by the Peabody and the most famous motel there. Some friends of mine own it. And it was like night and day. I would not have been afraid for my wife and daughter to be broke down in a car down there or just pull off to the side of the road. It is night and day because Donald J. Trump saw that and he's put a stop to it.
It's very interesting to me. The Democrats want your colleague Eric Swalwell to drop out of the governor's race. Why are we not tossing him out of the Congress along with Sheila Syphilis McCormick? Why aren't these people being exposed? I mean, she stole $5 million of our tax money, mostly to buy jewelry. And Swalwell is now very clearly has sexually assaulted a number of women. Why does the majority, and I think we get the votes for this, why don't we expel these people?
Because we don't have any guts, basically. we like writing tough letters and talking tough. But frankly, I think that some people have got something going on in their background they don't want to come out, and that is part of the problem. And I think I think we got a lot of that in D.C. on both sides of the aisle. But I'm with you. These folks need to go. We need to send a clear message. Enough is enough. I don't care whose party they're in. We ought to at least say, get them out. The thing about Swalwell, which is interesting, I was looking at some stuff on the numbers. I don't know. I don't think he was at 20%, but he was leading the poll in the Democrat polls. But they've got this jumbled thing where they needed to take him out to so their other people could move up, and they would have a shot at keeping the Democrat, or at least the radical fringe, controlling the governor's mansion in California. So the timing on this to me is suspect. I don't doubt that he's not guilty, but the timing to me just seems very suspect on this timing of Swalwell. So California is a different animal. You've operated out there. I've never even been to California, so I wouldn't even venture a guess at how it is. But I suspect it's not what it seems. That's my theory on that.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back with my friend Tim Burchett. Tim, you better give Eric Burlison a call. I didn't mean to hurt his feelings. He's one of my favorites, too. We'll be right back.
Eric's a good man. Yes, sir.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Roger Stone Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back with Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee's 2nd District. He's a truth teller, and he tells it like it is. I saw these shocking videos you post. Savannah Hernandez is a good friend of mine, a great journalist, and I saw these horrific videos of her being assaulted by Antifa and other radicals. This is really disgusting stuff. I guess let's get to the most important thing, because we only have about 4 minutes. You serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We're all disappointed that the Ayatollahs didn't throw in the towel this weekend, although I didn't think they were going to. You can't blame Donald Trump. He has given peace a chance. I was very happy that he sent Vice President J.D. Vance for those negotiations. I have the highest possible personal regard for Vice President Vance. Where do you think the war goes from here, Tim?
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think that Trump was right when he said, let's not send those arms. We sent some arms through one group, and Trump said, I don't trust them. They'll end up stealing the guns. They're too nice. And sure enough, they did. And all the experts, said that. But some other things I think people need to pay attention to is not, I was going to say United Nations, but the actual NATO, how they've turned their back on us. Frankly, we saved their ass all over the world, these countries. We put our troops there to keep the bad people away. And what have they done to show their respect to us? They've turned their back on us. And I think it's a good lesson for this country to learn, all these do-gooders that are out there, that we, a lot of times it's going to be just us on our own. And I think this has exposed the oil companies for what they are. They're greedy. We get zero oil from Iran. I realize it's a commodity, but you don't subsidize commodities. The federal government does billions of dollars. I think it just shows their loyalty as well is not with this country, but to the almighty dollar and greed. So I think Trump gets it. I mean, he's in it for the long haul. I'm afraid he'll lose Congress, though, if we put boots on the ground. I think we continue on with what we're doing. We offer them negotiations, but I'm with you. I never thought they'd deal with us in good faith. I don't believe it. And until their people can overthrow them and we can get arms to them to get them to be able to do that, I see it just dragging out.
I'm afraid I agree with you. I'm opposed to boots on the ground. I'm opposed to tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of American casualties. I'm particularly opposed to giant new contracts for Halliburton and General Dynamics and all these other defense contracts. See, the problem with war is it's extremely profitable for some people. And Trump ran as an anti-interventionist. He doesn't love war, but he also doesn't love countries that kill Americans and their own people. Iran has a long history of murdering Americans. And I was very not skeptical, but I was concerned in the beginning. But now I'm with the President of the United States. Once he makes a decision, then that's it for me. And this is a war we cannot afford to lose. Great piece yesterday, late last night, by General Michael Flynn on X. I strongly urge you to take a look at it. Really well put. All right, I'm going to see you in Washington, D.C. next week. I'm looking forward to that. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to that. I'm already thinking about which suit I'm going to wear. So I will see you in Washington. And many thanks to my guest, Congressman Tim Burchett, a true American patriot.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?